realize that at first. I assumed I'd taken a bad turn or miscounted intersections. That happens down there. The catacombs aren't a maze so much as a scar. Tunnels cut where stone was taken, not where people planned to walk. But after 40 minutes of steady movement, I should have crossed a known junction. I didn't. I stopped walking and listened. Water dripped somewhere far off. Air moved faintly through the tunnels, carrying the stale smell of damp limestone and old dust. Everything felt normal enough to be unsettling. I checked my headlamp. Full battery. I checked my phone. No signal. That was expected. I checked the map again. The corridor I was standing in didn't exist on it. The walls here were rougher than the tourist sections. Unfinished. Tool marks still visible. The ceiling was lower too, forcing me to hunch slightly as I moved forward. I told myself this was good footage. I told myself that several times. The first real warning came when I noticed the floor. There were no footprints, not mine, not anyone's. The dust lay smooth and undisturbed, even though I'd been walking for nearly an hour. I knelt and pressed my fingers into it. The surface gave way easily, leaving clear impressions. I stood slowly and looked back the way I'd come. My tracks were already gone, not covered, not smudged, gone. I turned in a slow circle, light sweeping the walls. That's when I saw the bones, not stacked, not decorative, not arranged with the strange care the catacombs are famous for. These were wrong. Skulls half embedded in the limestone, as if the rock had grown around them. Femurs protruding at odd angles, rib cages fused into the wall, broken and incomplete. Some of the bones were cracked, some were polished smooth. I didn't touch them. I don't know why that felt important, but it did. I backed away and continued forward. The tunnel narrowed. The ceiling dipped lower. My breath grew louder in my ears, every exhale bouncing back at me from too many directions. Then I heard movement. Not footsteps. Something shifting weight. Stone grinding lightly against stone. It wasn't behind me. It wasn't ahead of me. It was parallel, matching my pace from somewhere beyond the wall. I stopped. So did it. I moved again. So did it. That was when panic set in. I broke into a jog, then a run, my shoulder clipping the wall as the tunnel curved sharply. The air grew colder, heavier. The smell changed again, thick with something old and metallic. I burst into a chamber and nearly fell. The room was circular, maybe 20 feet across. Every inch of the walls was covered in bones. No symmetry, no patterns. Just layers and layers packed tight. At the center of the chamber lay debris, broken lanterns, old ropes, modern plastic bottles crushed flat as if stepped on. People had been here, recently. My headlamp flickered. I slapped it instinctively, heart hammering. The light steadied. That's when I noticed the marks on the floor. Drag marks, deep ones, leading into a narrow opening at the far side of the chamber. Too low to walk through without crawling. I didn't hear movement anymore. That scared me more than the sound ever had. I turned to leave. The tunnel behind me wasn't there. In its place was a solid wall of stone and bone, packed tight, seamless, as if the passage had never existed. I stood there breathing hard, staring at something that should not have been possible. The only exit left was the crawl space. I waited a long time before going through. Time stopped making sense down there. I crawled on my stomach, gear scraping rock, my breath shallow. The tunnel sloped downward, growing colder with every foot. The smell was overwhelming now, not decay. Something older, dry, dusty, ancient. The crawl space opened suddenly, I dropped into a larger chamber and rolled onto my side, gasping. This room was different. The walls were smooth, carved, deliberate. Symbols were etched into the stone, repeating in long bands around the chamber. Not letters, not language. Geometric shapes that made my eyes hurt if I stared too long. At the far end of the room stood a structure built from bones. Not stacked, built, arched, reinforced, purposeful. Inside it, something moved, slowly. I shut off my headlamp. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Or terror. In the darkness, I listened. There was no breathing, no footsteps. Just the sound of stone shifting as something large adjusted its position. Then came the sound that finally broke me. Not a voice, a rhythm. A steady scraping, repeating over and over, like something counting without numbers. I don't remember running. I remember light suddenly burning my eyes. I remember hands grabbing me, shouting in French. I woke up in a hospital. They told me I'd been found in a restricted section, miles from any known entrance, alone, dehydrated, hypothermic. My camera was never recovered. Neither was my map. When I asked how they found me, one of the workers hesitated before answering. They said someone had sealed off a tunnel that morning. Fresh stone, fresh bone, blocking a passage that wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to open the door. It wasn't marked on any map, old or new. No graffiti, no warnings. Just a steel maintenance hatch set into the stone, bolted shut and half buried under calcified runoff. What caught my attention was the temperature. Standing in front of it, the air was noticeably warmer. Not humid, not stale. Warm, like breath trapped behind metal. I worked for the city. Low-level infrastructure inspections, drainage, access points, forgotten service tunnels. I've been sent below ground dozens of times before. This door wasn't on the list. The bolts came free easier than they should have. When I pulled it open, the smell hit first. Dry air, old dust, no rot, no moisture. As if the space beyond had been sealed deliberately. My light revealed a corridor with smooth walls and a perfectly level floor. No quarry marks, no bones, no debris. Too clean. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me without a sound. Not slammed, not locked, just closed. I turned back immediately. The handle turned. The bolts were still gone. The door didn't open. I pressed my palm against it. Warm. That's when I noticed the walls weren't stone. They were coated, layer after layer of something hardened and pale, stretched tight like dried plaster. Embedded within it were shapes that looked almost organic. Not bones, impressions, hands, faces, bodies pressed outward as if the walls had softened once and then solidified. I walked faster. The corridor curved gently, always sloping downward, always warm. The air moved in slow pulses, like the space itself was breathing. At the end, I found a chamber, and inside it, rows of metal doors, hundreds of them, each marked with a date. The most recent was yesterday. Mine. We were hired to confirm a boundary. That was it. Nothing dramatic. A civil engineering firm needed verification that a redevelopment project wouldn't intersect with undocumented underground voids. The city approved the access. We had plans, escorts, and a hard stop time. 4 hours underground, no deviations. There were 5 of us, 2 engineers, 1 geologist, 1 city liaison, me handling documentation. The first 90 minutes were routine. Known tunnels, reinforcement beams, bone walls. Everything matched the archive drawings. Then the measurements stopped matching reality. Distances between junctions increased by small margins at first. 1 meter here, 2 meters there. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to force recalibration. The geologist noticed first. He pointed out that the limestone composition had changed. Same depth, same region, completely different density. That shouldn't happen. We reached a junction that wasn't on any plan. No markings, no collapse. Just a clean opening cut at a precise angle. The city liaison told us not to enter it. The engineers overruled him. Inside, the tunnel sloped gently downward and widened into a long, rectangular corridor. The walls were smooth. Tool marks were absent. This wasn't quarried stone. The floor showed wear patterns. Heavy traffic. We followed it. After 10 minutes, radio stopped working. After 15, the geologist stopped walking. He said the tunnel floor wasn't worn randomly. It was worn into lanes, defined paths, repeated use, directional. We turned back. The corridor behind us was shorter than before. That's when we realized the tunnel wasn't static. It was updating. We exited 3 hours later through a maintenance hatch none of us recognized. Only 4 of us came back up. The city archived the report under mapping error. No one explained where the 5th man's equipment went. I was mapping acoustic anomalies. Old tunnels carry sound in strange ways. Some amplify it, some swallow it. The catacombs are especially good at preserving echoes. That's what made this site interesting. Every noise lingered too long. Footsteps didn't fade. They repeated, not as echoes, but as delayed reproductions, like the tunnel was storing them. I tested it. I clapped once. 3 seconds later, the sound returned. Identical. Same volume, same sharpness. I clapped again. 2 responses came back. I marked the chamber and moved deeper. The walls changed. Bones were present, but not stacked. They were set into recesses, each skull aligned with a shallow groove cut into the stone. I spoke. My voice came back wrong. Not distorted, reordered. Syllables arrived out of sequence, overlapping themselves. I backed away. The tunnel behind me repeated my footsteps before I took them. I stood still. The sound continued. Something else had learned the rhythm. I reached a larger chamber where the grooves converged at the ceiling. Thousands of them, all angled toward a central cavity. This wasn't a burial site. It was an instrument. Sound entered the system, traveled through the walls, and came back altered, optimized. I shut off my recorder. The chamber didn't stop responding. It had enough data. When I finally escaped, my audio files were blank, except for one track. It contained footsteps I did not record. I used the same access point every week. Same ladder, same service tunnel. Same left turn past a bone wall missing its lower row. I knew it by muscle memory. On the 4th week, the left turn was gone. In its place was a straight corridor. Same width, same ceiling height, same dust. New construction underground leave signs, tool marks, fresh debris. This had none. I checked my notes, my photos. The wall hadn't moved. The corridor simply existed now. I stepped in far enough to confirm it was real. Then I stepped back out. I reported it. The city denied its existence. The following week, curiosity won. I walked the corridor. It curved gently and led into a sequence of right-angle turns that felt deliberately confusing. Each junction was identical, same stains, same cracks. After 10 minutes, I noticed something odd. My footprints didn't continue behind me. They stopped. Ahead of me, new prints appeared, bare, elongated, too precise. The corridor opened into a narrow room with walls covered in shallow impressions, not carvings, presses, like something had leaned against the stone repeatedly. I turned to leave. The corridor behind me shortened, not collapsed, shortened. Stone flowed inward, smoothing itself as I watched. I escaped by breaking through a maintenance wall and triggering an alarm. The corridor was sealed the next day. Officially, it never existed. But the dust patterns near the seal keep changing, as if something still uses it